Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with a discussion about the Old World mod for Total War Warhammer 3. And what I want to talk about in this video is how this mod makes the Carrick Peaks fight so much better than the vanilla game in several ways. Now obviously the Old World mod has made Carrick Peaks significantly better ever since it came out, but I think it's always worth looking back at this, especially given the state of Belegar's campaign in Warhammer 3. Because you see, Belegar has a big problem in Immortal Empires in that he is constantly struggling with that plus 50% upkeep until he retakes Carrick Peaks. But once he does retake Carrick Peaks, which is just one settlement, he does become immensely powerful. So that's not really a great campaign dynamic. Now, to be clear, what you're seeing here in this video is not the way you want to play this. There are many different decisions you could make with regards to it. But all the same, what I think this mod does is really incentivize you to have that significant clash over 8 peaks. Because let's take a look at the geography over here. So Carrick 8 peaks in the Old World mod is this entire area of the campaign. So all the settlements over here are part of Carrick 8 peaks. And that counts towards you achieving said objective, because okay, there is one settlement that requires you are required to get in order to achieve an oath fulfilled, but that is unrelated to you dealing with the upkeep downside that you typically have as Belegar. So you do get oath fulfilled if you take out Skarsnik. Whether or not you want to rush Skarsnik or take your time with it, that's a different discussion. In this case, I've set up an ambush. Yes, I do have a bunch of miners, but I also have some quarrelers, warriors, as well as Belegar's unique heroes. So, not tying the benefit Belegar gets from taking Carrick 8 peaks to 8 peaks as a whole is a great thing, because you still have to deal with that upkeep situation until you gain control of 8 peaks, and you are also losing control until that specific point. So that, I think, is a great choice right there, because it means you do have different stages, if you will, of what control of 8 peaks means. If we look at the lore of 8 peaks, it was a constant war, and eventually, well, the Skaven won. Or rather, Belegar got defeated by a combination of Skarsnik and the Skaven, and then the Skaven fought Skarsnik, and well, Skarsnik kind of just gave up because, actually, depression, his squid died. Yes, greenskins do actually have emotions, imagine that idea. So you have all of these settlements that are part of 8 peaks, and the great thing here is these settlements do have landmarks. Not all of them are the best in the world, but they do offer you tangible reasons to actually care about investing in 8 peaks, depending on which part of it you do control. So for instance, you might have the Silver Tower over here, which is, I think, Skarsnik's starting settlement, but if you take it over as Belegar, you get a lot of income, iron resource production, growth, winds of magic. Of course, winds of magic is a bit ridiculous for, dwarves, but it is a really useful landmark. So this means that actually fighting over 8 peaks, dealing with Skarsnik, and dealing with Queek, if you're playing as Belegar, is very, very much worth it in this campaign, so that's already pretty good. But on top of that, it's also what's fantastic about the way Old World does handle this entire situation is how it tackles the aspect of upkeep. So you do start with that plus 50% upkeep to your units, but you do start reducing it the more of Carrick 8 peaks you control. So over here I have control of 3 settlements. The upkeep has been reduced to 30%, plus 30%. Still substantial, but it's certainly a lot more manageable than it is by default, where it's like you just have 50% until you get one settlement in Immortal Empires, and that is it. So that certainly makes it far more manageable. Also a lot of grudges, so that's really, really good if you're playing a Belegar campaign right here. So yeah, just substantially a better system. And then you also have to consider this. there are two Greenskins factions next to each other. So you have Red Fangs and you have Skarsnik. Then there's two Skaven factions, a minor Skaven faction and a major Skaven faction in Queek. Then you have Belegar and Karak in close proximity. So it's not just 3 major factions fighting over Carrick Peaks. It's 3 major factions and 3 minor ones, and also the ogres that Belegar starts at war with. Yeah, a bit weird with regards to that specific decision, but all the same, it is that kind of decision making you do have to make as Belegar, who you're going to focus on. Do you just ignore the major factions? Do you try and save Karak? Do you ignore, Gorfang Rutgut, who, by the way, in this case, does actually control Black Crag, which, yeah, he should control Black Crag. That's actually kind of the thing about him in the lore. So you do have this process which pushes you to make different decisions depending on what you're dealing with and which factions you want to eliminate and how. And of course, we also have to consider faction potential. So I think in this case, Karak did get a lot of faction potential, so that's the reason Queek is struggling a bit, so to speak. I would still believe he would win, because Queek, but it's certainly not for certain right here that Karak gets wiped out. So very useful to keep in mind that dynamic aspect of the campaign and how things play out. So that means whenever you start a campaign here, it's always going to be a bit different in a Dwarven campaign when you're, or any campaign right here, when you're dealing with this entire situation. And of course, then we talk about confederations with legendary lords and all that kind of stuff, or, Skaven confederations for diplomacy, I know, or just Skarsnik beating up Gorfang and Rotgut and taking over the West Death Pass. So those are the kind of decisions you have to make. Also, you do have Barak Var to take into consideration as well, which in this case is actually not just going to be wiped out by a minor faction or a major faction, but they're actually going to be quite useful for Belegar. You also do obviously have the choice to Karak of a confederation if you want to do that or not early on in a campaign. So all those kind of decisions, dilemmas that you do have to make. So I think as a package, this is something Creative Assembly should learn from. And I think I can speak for a lot of people that it's always been disappointing how Creative Assembly has always handled the Carrick Peak situation, even going so far back as Warhammer 1. But yeah, that's all I had to say. Christine signing out. Stay tuned for more, because there is obviously more coming. And look, the Old World mod does a lot of things great. Like, you look at Kislev. Kislev in itself benefits a lot from this. I would say, like, Boris is kind of the least, because he's, kind of, in the middle of freaking nowhere. But all the same, you do have a far different campaign structure than you do by default in the game, and it's just like, yeah, this map is ridiculous. I kind of don't care about the Realms of Chaos themselves in the corner. Some people do, but I'm just like, yeah, they're not great. But parts like the Empire, Kislev, Carrick Peaks, and a couple other places, just freaking amazing. Zarnagrund in itself. Anyway, stay tuned.